the election coming our way, ready or not. And, I mean, where are you at with that, honestly? You've perhaps seen some leaders' debates. You've seen some of the interviews that we've got here on Rhema. You've no doubt had a whole bunch of stuff shoved through your letterbox. Have you made a decision about who you're going to vote for, who your local candidate or the party vote as well? Now, when it comes to making decisions, there are three essential things that are needed for a democracy to not just survive, but to thrive in any situation, including here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. You may have heard Dave Mann from the Hope Project talk about this on our radio. Well, here he is on the show. Dave, kia ora. First of all, thank you for joining us today.
Kia ora, Andrew.
Let's work through these three particular issues that we need for democracy to be effective in society. What are they? Let's run through one at a time, Dave.
Yeah, well, the first one is that the people themselves actually need to be moral, because only a moral people will have a moral government.
Okay.
And the basic idea here is that the politicians will put out all their bribes, called their promises, to try and attract you to vote for them, because they understand that you're not intelligent and you're not moral. You're just looking out for number one.
Yeah.
And so if we only vote on the basis of what personally benefits us, we're letting ourselves be bought out, and we, the people, are actually corrupting the system, forcing the politicians to pander to that, and actually undermining, therefore, the integrity of our government. So we need to vote instead for the character of the politician, politicians with good character, and for sensible policies, even if they personally disadvantage us. That would be a moral vote. So that's the first, if we want our democracy to not just survive but thrive.
It is an interesting one, really, because I think the way in which democracy has pivoted, particularly in Western democracies, it's become kind of like advertising, really. The marketing people have got for it and says, okay, how can we get eyes on this? How can we attract people? How can we distract people and say, hey, look at us, we're over here? A lot of advertising techniques have become involved. Answering the only question in advertising is what's in it for me and how can I make my life better or easier. These aren't necessarily great principles for democracy, though, right?
No, they're actually terrible for democracy, and it comes down to who's got the most money. I mean, one of the governments in America in the last election, spent more money than most nations would spend in a year just on their election campaign, to get into power. So and it really comes down to a form of corruption, because then you can have the lobby groups who are trying to twist the arms of the politicians and throwing money at them to enable their campaigns, and then they try to make the election issues what they want them to be so that they look good. So it actually, the problem that the media actually can become a part of the corruption of the integrity of a democracy. And meanwhile, a party could be there with fantastic policies that are for our good. The problem is we all hate them because we think they're terrible and bad because of what we've been told. So it's this is a very challenging time to be engaged with integrity.
Exactly. And if you do have decent parties and you don't have the money to buy the advertising to claim that you do, then you're not getting the oxygen in that regard. Now, you mentioned beforehand how a lot of democracy is run on the presumption that voters are immoral and stupid. I mean, let's tackle the second one of those presumptions, that you need a voting population, to be not only informed but intelligent. This is what makes democracy work.
So the first dynamic is moral. The second is the people have to be informed. So they have to actually know who their political parties and options are, the politicians and their policies. The problem is that if media begins to become corrupted, and that's going to happen wherever there's money in connection with media, then media can begin to take one side of an argument. And in media, for example, you can direct this conversation through your questions. So a media that has its own political bias, which I suggest our New Zealand media does, can ask questions that make one party look like the hero on average and another look like the villain. So they can create the heroes and the villains kind of the story through their questions. So to be informed, the challenge as corruption sets in, which it invariably does because people are people, that's what we do, the people actually therefore need to also be intelligent enough to know that they won't be informed if they just believe everything they hear. And I would suggest that we need to be intelligent enough to know, forget only what you hear on the television and radio. You're going to have to actually look at some of the policies of these parties and investigate to look at the moral character of the politicians. because the policies are the second most important thing. The most important, though, is the character of the politician.
Okay. Now,
are they the kind of politician who would give you a promise and then change it later on?
Exactly.
And so we need to do our investigation intelligently to be informed.
Now,
otherwise we can be duped. Yeah.
I love the fact that you're almost advocating for cynicism being a ministry gift, Dave, or at least not being so naive that we believe everything that we're told. And in defence of media, briefly, as a representative of the dark arts of media, I suppose trying to squish everything down into a soundbite, trying to get people's attention and say, hey, we're trying to make it easy for people to make prayerful and informed decisions. Actually, you can't rely on media to do all your heavy lifting. Honestly, you need to actually do your own homework on that one. And hey, people are so busy trying to get likes on Facebook or whatever it is nowadays that who has time for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the real danger here is that even communist nations have elections.
Yeah.
So the fact that we've got an election doesn't mean that we're a free nation.
Mm-hmm.
And how do communist nations have elections? Because they control the media.
Yeah.
So they control the media, they control the education. They only allow one train of thought. They get 70, 80% of the vote and they're in power again. So, so we've got to be moral, but we've got to be informed. And to be informed, sometimes we'll have to be intelligent enough to know we can't believe everything we hear.
Do our own digging and our own research in that regard. Now, the third one for a democracy to thrive is for people to be involved, because you can be very intelligent, very informed, you can be very moral, but if you're not voting, what difference are you making? Actually, if you're not engaging with the democratic process, honestly, you are a waste of democratic space.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, in a kingdom, you've got subjects.
Yep.
But in democracy, you've got citizens, and we are the citizens. And technically, if you look at it's a Christian idea, our whole system of government is based on Christian values. Our politicians are actually public servants. It's like Jesus said, the greatest is the servant. The one who leads should lead as a servant. And so the idea is that they're a representative government. They represent me and you, and we're their boss because we're the ones who put them in power through our vote. If we don't like what they're doing, the only power we have is through our vote. I'd say, secondly, through the feedback we give to them when they are in power to keep them accountable to their promises and to what's good and right. And our third power is to pray, because I think sometimes these things do need God's help.
I think part of the problem with this, though, is you mentioned beginning with the advertising agencies saying, that people are immoral and stupid. Immoral and stupid, uninformed, unintelligent, apathetic people, they get the same amount of votes as everybody else. This is one of the failings of democracy. You don't have to do your research. You don't have to make informed, prayerful decisions when you cast your vote. You can vote based on your favourite colour. This is the freedom that we have in this democracy. But if we're going to counterbalance that, hey, I suppose it's on us who do consider ourselves to be making decisions from an informed and moral point of view, and certainly doing so prayerfully. It's up to us to tip the scales in the opposite direction, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I think this is where, in some of the thoughts I put together, this year around the election, I've quoted people from 200 years ago. And the reason is they understood the importance of what it takes and the values that enable democratic freedoms and personal freedoms in life. And they understood it because they had lived under tyranny.
Yes.
We're in this unfortunate position of having lived in one of the most free, prosperous, equality-based charitable nations on planet Earth under a democratic government because of Christian influence. And we've been so comfortable that we've forgotten our history. We've forgotten the values that established the system. And we're actually in danger at the other end of the spectrum of losing it unless we can discover again some really important, simple things about democratic government.
Our freedoms have made us flabby, as it were, Dave.
Yeah, that's the one.
Now, just as we're closing, because just about out of time for today, informed and prayerful decisions, that has to be a key part of it as part of the kingdom of God, praying for who we should vote for and then praying for whoever ends up getting in, right?
That's right. We don't look just at the promises. We look instead at the policies. We don't look at the personality and the showmanship and how good they look on TV. We look for the character and the principles by which the politician lives. And then we pray and we say, God, give me wisdom. And by God's grace, God's with us. God's in this nation. There's a lot of good people in this nation. Like in the time of was it Elijah, where he felt despairing. Oh, what's the use here? I'm the only one. God says, no, there's 7,000 who haven't bowed the knee to Baal.
Yeah.
And in the same way, God's people are still here in this nation. There's still hope. We've got to be involved and do our bit and keep looking to God.
Dave, thank you so much for doing your bit. Thank you for your words of wisdom and encouragement. As always, thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers, Andrew.